For 30 years, Carmen Rodriguez kept Michael Jordan's darkest secret. She watched from Milwaukee as the world celebrated him as a hero, knowing the truth about what he did to her and other women during the Bulls' championship years. She stayed silent through fear, through threats, through the weight of raising his son alone. But when she saw Jordan's smiling face on the front page, being praised once again as a role model, something inside her finally broke. The scared 23-year-old girl who fled Chicago in 1993 was gone. In her place stood a 54-year-old woman who was tired of protecting a monster. It was time for the world to know who Michael Jordan really was behind the cameras and crowds. And when Jordan learned what she planned to do, his reaction would shock everyone, including Carmen herself. Carmen Rodriguez stared at the newspaper on her kitchen table. Michael Jordan's face smiled back at her from the front page of the Chicago Tribune sports section. The headline read, "MJ donates $10 million to Chicago youth programs. Basketball legend continues his heroic legacy." Her hands shook as she picked up the paper. Even after 30 years, seeing his face still made her stomach twist into knots. "Mom, you okay?" Carmen looked up at her 8-year-old son Marcus, who was sitting across from her doing his math homework. His dark eyes were full of concern. Those eyes, they looked just like... She pushed the thought away, like she had done thousands of times before. "I'm fine, baby. Just reading the news." But she wasn't fine. She hadn't been fine for 30 years. Carmen folded the newspaper and walked to her small living room window. Outside, the south side of Chicago looked the same as it always had. Kids played basketball in the street. Mothers called them in for dinner. Life moved on like it always did. But inside Carmen's modest apartment on 47th Street, time had stopped in night. She walked back to the kitchen and opened the drawer next to the sink. Under old bills and grocery store coupons, she found what she was looking for. A small piece of paper with a phone number written in blue ink. Jennifer Walsh, sports reporter, Chicago Tribune. Jennifer had given Carmen her card 3 months ago at the grocery store. Carmen had been buying milk when Jennifer recognized her. "Excuse me, aren't you Carmen Rodriguez? You used to dance for the Bulls back in the day, right?" Carmen had frozen. Nobody had recognized her in years. She kept her head down, worked at her dance studio, and stayed out of the spotlight. "I think you have me confused with someone else," Carmen had said, trying to walk away. "No, I'm sure it's you. I'm working on a story about the Bulls' championship years. The untold stories, you know? I'd love to talk to you sometime." Jennifer had pressed her business card into Carmen's hand before Carmen could say no. Now, looking at Jordan's smiling face and the newspaper, Carmen felt something break inside her chest. All these years, she had stayed quiet. She had protected his secret. She had let the world see him as a hero, while she lived with the truth. The truth about what really happened during those championship years. The truth about why she had disappeared from Chicago. The truth about Marcus's father. Carmen picked up her phone and dialed Jennifer's number before she could change her mind. "Jennifer Walsh, Tribune. This is Carmen Rodriguez. You gave me your card a few months ago. You said you were working on a story about the Bulls." There was silence on the other end. Then Jennifer's voice suddenly very interested.
"Carmen, yes, I remember. I'm so glad you called. I was hoping we could talk."
Carmen's heart was beating so fast, she could hear it in her ears. "I have something to tell you about Michael Jordan. Something that will change how people see him forever." "What kind of something?" Carmen looked at Marcus, who was still working on his homework. He didn't know. He had never known. But maybe it was time for the world to know. "Not over the phone," Carmen said. "Can we meet somewhere? Somewhere private?" "Of course. When and where?" "Tomorrow. There's a small cafe on 18th Street in Pilsen called Nuevo Dia. Do you know?" "I'll find it." "What time?" 2 o'clock. "After I drop Marcus at school." "Carmen, can you give me any idea what this is about? Just so I know what kind of story we're talking about." Carmen closed her eyes. In her mind, she was 22 years old again. She was wearing her Bulls dancer uniform. She was walking into Chicago Stadium, thinking she was living a dream. She didn't know it was about to become a nightmare. "It's about what he did to me," Carmen said quietly. "What he did to other women too. And it's about the night everything changed." "Changed how?" "The night I found out who Michael Jordan really was." Behind all the cameras and crowds and championship trophies, Jennifer's voice was gentle but urgent. Carmen, are you saying Michael Jordan hurt you? Carmen looked at the newspaper again. Jordan's perfect smile. His perfect image. His perfect life built on secrets and lies. I'm saying the world thinks they know Michael Jordan. But they don't. They know the basketball player. They don't know the man. And you do. I knew him better than anyone should have to. Carmen could hear Jennifer typing on her computer. Carmen, this is serious. Do you have proof of what you're saying? Carmen walked to her bedroom closet. On the top shelf behind old photo albums and Christmas decorations was a small metal box. Inside that box was a cassette tape. On the tape was a conversation between her and Michael Jordan from March, a conversation that could destroy his reputation forever. Yes, Carmen said. I have proof. What kind of proof? The kind that will make people understand why I disappeared. Why I left Chicago and never came back. Why I changed my whole life. Carmen heard Marcus call from the kitchen. Mom, I'm done with my homework. Can we watch TV? In a minute, baby, she called back. Carmen, Jennifer said. I want you to know that if we do this story, it's going to be big. People are going to want to know everything. Your life is going to change. My life already changed. 30 years ago. I just never told anyone why. Are you sure you're ready for this? Carmen looked at Marcus one more time. He was the best thing that had ever happened to her. He was smart and kind and nothing like his father. But he deserved to know the truth. The world deserved to know the truth. I've been ready for 30 years, Carmen said. I just needed the courage to do it. Okay? I'll see you tomorrow at 2 o'clock. And Carmen? Yes. Thank you for calling. Stories like this, they matter. They help other people who might be going through the same thing. After Carmen hung up, she sat in her quiet kitchen for a long time. The newspaper was still open, Jordan's smiling face. Tomorrow, she would tell Jennifer everything. About the secret relationship. About what Jordan did to her and other women, about the threats. And the fear and the reason she ran away. But tonight, she would hold her son and remember that some secrets are too heavy to carry alone. Outside her window, the Chicago skyline glittered in the distance. Somewhere in that city, Michael Jordan is probably at some fancy dinner or charity event, being celebrated as a hero. Tomorrow, Carmen would begin to tell the world who he really was. She folded the newspaper and put it in the trash. Then she walked into the living room where Marcus was waiting. What do you want to watch, baby? Can we watch the Bulls game highlights? Carmen's heart clenched, but she smiled at her son. How about we watch a movie instead? As they settled onto the couch together, Carmen wondered if she was doing the right thing. But then she remembered something her mother used to tell her. The truth doesn't get easier with time, Misha. It just gets heavier. Tomorrow, she would finally put down that weight. The next day, Carmen sat across from Jennifer Walsh at Nuevo Dia Cafe on 18th Street in Pilsen. The small Mexican restaurant had been her family's favorite spot when she was growing up. The smell of fresh tortillas and coffee brought back memories of simpler times. Jennifer was younger than Carmen expected, maybe 35, with short brown hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She had a small tape recorder and a notebook on the table between them. Thank you for meeting me, Jennifer said. I know this must be hard. Carmen's hands were shaking as she picked up her coffee cup. I've never told this story to anyone. Not the whole story. Take your time. Start wherever feels right. Carmen closed her eyes and let her mind travel back 31 years. It was 1992. I was 22 years old and had just made the Bulls dance team. I thought I was living a dream. She could see herself so clearly. Young Carmen with long black hair and big dreams. She was studying business at DePaul University and working nights at her family's restaurant, Rodriguez Family Kitchen, just a few blocks from where they sat now. The Bulls had just won their second championship. They beat Portland in the finals. The whole city was going crazy. Everyone wanted to be part of it. Carmen remembered the celebration party after Game 6. It was at Harry Caray's restaurant on North State Street. All the players were there with their families and friends. The dancers were invited too, but Carmen almost didn't go. I was tired from working at my parents' restaurant all day. But my best friend Sofia Martinez convinced me to come. She was also a Bulls dancer. She said it would be fun to celebrate with the team. Jennifer was taking notes, but she looked up. Tell me about that night. When we got to Harry Caray's, it was packed. Everyone wanted to talk to the players, especially Michael. He was sitting at a big table with Scottie Pippen and Horace Grant. All the other dancers were trying to get their attention. Carmen smiled at the memory, even though it hurt. But I wasn't like the other girls. I didn't throw myself at famous men. I had my own goals. I wanted to finish college and open my own dance studio to help kids in my neighborhood. She remembered standing at the bar with Sophia, watching all the chaos around Jordan's table. Women were bringing him drinks, asking for autographs, trying to get pictures with him. Then he walked over to me, Carmen continued. Just like that, he left all those other women and came to talk to me. What did he say? He asked why I wasn't over there with everyone else. I told him I was there to celebrate the championship, not to bother the players. He seemed surprised by that. Carmen could still hear Jordan's voice from that night. Deep and confident, but also curious about her. We talked for about an hour, not about basketball, but about real things. I told him about school, about wanting to help kids through dance. He told me about growing up in North Carolina, about his family. He seemed normal, like a regular person. How did it feel, talking to the most famous athlete in the world? That's the thing. In that moment, he didn't feel like the most famous athlete in the world. He felt like a guy who was actually interested in what I had to say. Nobody had ever listened to me like that before. Carmen paused to sip her coffee. The next part was harder to talk about. He asked me to dinner the next week. A real date, not just hanging out after games. I said yes. Their first date was at a quiet Italian restaurant in Lincoln Park. Jordan picked her up in his red Ferrari. Carmen had never been in such an expensive car before. He was a perfect gentleman that night, Carmen said. He opened doors, asked about my family, remembered everything I had told him. When he took me home, he didn't even try to kiss me. He just said he had a great time and asked if he could see me again. Jennifer looked up from her notes. That sounds nice. When did things change? Carmen's face grew serious. It didn't happen all at once. For the first few months, everything was wonderful. He took me to games, fancy restaurants, introduced me to his friends. He even came to my parents' restaurant to meet my family. Carmen remembered how proud her parents had been. Roberto and Maria Rodriguez had worked so hard to build their small business. When Michael Jordan walked into Rodriguez's family kitchen and complimented her mother's cooking, they were over the moon. He promised to help me open my dance studio. He paid for some of my college classes. He made me feel like I was special, like I mattered. But something changed. Slowly, I started to see a different side of him. In public, he was always perfect, signing autographs, taking pictures, being the hero everyone wanted him to be. But in private, Carmen's voice got quieter. In private, he could be mean. He would get angry over small things. He treated waiters and hotel staff like they were nothing. He had a terrible gambling problem that was much worse than what people knew about. She remembered one night at a private poker game in a downtown hotel. Jordan lost over $100,000 and threw such a fit that security had to calm him down. But the worst thing was how he treated me when we were alone. He wanted to control everything. What I wore, where I went, who I talked to. If I questioned him about anything, he would get furious. Jennifer's pen had stopped moving. Did he hurt you physically? Not at first. But he would grab my arm too hard, or push me against walls when he was mad. He would yell at me and call me names. He made me feel like I was nothing without him. Carmen's hands were shaking again. She put her coffee cup down. Then I found out about the other women. Other women? Jordan was seeing several women at the same time. Dancers, reporters, women who worked at hotels where the team stayed. And he was doing something terrible to all of us. Carmen looked out the window at the busy street. Kids were walking home from school, just like she used to do. He was recording us, she said quietly. Intimate moments, private conversations. He had hidden cameras in hotel rooms, in his apartment. He was collecting these recordings like trophies. Jennifer's face went pale. Did you know he was recording you? Not at first. I found out by accident in March 1993. We were in New York for a game against the Knicks. I went to his hotel room early and found a camera hidden behind a picture frame. Carmen remembered that moment perfectly. The shock, the betrayal, The sick feeling in her stomach when she realized what had been happening. When I confronted him, he didn't deny it. He just laughed and said all famous men do things like that. He said it was normal. What did you do? I threatened to leave him. That's when he showed me who he really was. Carmen's voice became very quiet. He told me that if I ever said anything to anyone, he would destroy my family's restaurant. He said he had powerful friends who could make sure I never worked in Chicago again. He said nobody would believe me over him anyway. Jennifer was writing furiously now. Carmen, this is serious. What Jordan did was illegal. I know that now. But back then, I was just a scared 22-year-old girl. He was Michael Jordan, the most famous person in Chicago, who was going to believe me. Carmen looked at her watch. She needed to pick up Marcus from school soon. There's more to the story, she said. Much more. But that's how it started. With me thinking I was in love with a hero, and slowly realizing I was trapped by a monster. Jennifer closed her notebook. Carmen, I believe you. And I think other people will too. But I need to ask, do you have any proof of what you're telling me? Carmen smiled for the first time that day. I have a tape recording of him admitting everything. From March 1993, right before I disappeared. Jennifer's eyes widened. You recorded him? He taught me well. Always protect yourself, he used to say. So I did. Carmen stood up and put money on the table for her coffee. The next time we meet, I'll bring the tape. But I have to warn you, what's on that recording is going to shock you. It shocked me, and I lived through it. As Carmen walked to her car, she felt something she hadn't felt in 30 years. Relief. She had finally started telling the truth. Tomorrow, she would tell Jennifer about the worst night of her life. The night that changed everything. The night she discovered just how dangerous Michael Jordan could be. But today, she had taken the first step. She had started to put down that heavy weight she had been carrying for so long. The truth was finally beginning to come out. 3 days later, Carmen met Jennifer again at the same cafe. This time, she brought a small metal box that had been hidden in her closet for 30 years. Before I show you what's inside, Carmen said, I need to tell you about the good times. People need to understand that it wasn't all bad. That's what made it so confusing. Jennifer nodded and opened her notebook. Tell me about when things were good. Carmen's eyes got distant as she remembered the fall and winter of 1992. For about 6 months, I thought I was living in a fairy tale. Those were the months when Jordan seemed to truly care about her. He would call her every morning before practice. He brought her flowers after games. He remembered small things, like her favorite coffee order, or when she had important tests at DePaul University. He helped pay for my college classes, Carmen said. Business and dance education. He said he wanted to help me achieve my dreams. Carmen remembered sitting in the library at DePaul, studying for her final exams while Jordan was at practice. He had told her that education was important, that she should never depend on anyone else for her future. He came to my parents' restaurant at least once a week. Rodriguez Family Kitchen was just a small place with 12 tables, but he acted like it was the finest restaurant in Chicago. Carmen smiled at the memory of her parents' faces the first time Jordan walked through their doors. Her father Roberto had been so nervous he dropped a plate of tacos. Her mother Maria had insisted on cooking Jordan's meal personally. My parents loved him. He would sit in the kitchen with my mom, learning how to make her famous mole sauce. He told my dad stories about playing basketball in North Carolina. They thought he was perfect for me. Jordan had even helped her family when the restaurant's roof leaked during a bad storm in November 1992. He paid for the repairs without being asked and told them not to worry about paying him back. He made me feel like I was the only woman in the world, Carmen continued. When we were together, he gave me all his attention. He listened to my ideas about the dance studio I wanted to open. He promised to help me find the perfect location. Carmen remembered walking through different neighborhoods in Chicago with Jordan, looking at empty buildings that could become her dance studio. He had big plans for how they could help kids in the community. The Bulls were having their best season ever. Every game at Chicago Stadium was sold out. The fans went crazy every time Michael stepped on the court, and I got to watch it all from special seats right behind the team bench. Those games were magical. Carmen remembered the energy in Chicago's stadium, how the whole building would shake when the crowd got excited. Jordan would sometimes catch her eye during timeouts and smile. making her feel like she was part of something historic. After games, we would go to quiet restaurants where we could just talk. He told me about the pressure he felt to be perfect all the time, how hard it was to live up to everyone's expectations. Jordan had seemed so human in those moments. He talked about missing his college friends, about wanting to have a normal relationship. He said Carmen was the first woman who liked him for who he was, not for his fame or money. He met all my friends from school. He came to my dance recitals at DePaul. He acted like a regular boyfriend, not like the most famous athlete in the world. Carmen's friend Sofia Martinez had been so jealous. "You're living every woman's dream," Sofia used to tell her. "Michael Jordan is in love with you." And it did feel like love. Jordan bought Carmen thoughtful gifts, not expensive jewelry, but things that showed he understood her. A book about starting your own business, a CD of Mexican folk music like her grandmother used to play, a photo album filled with pictures of them together. On my 23rd birthday, in January 1993, he threw me a surprise party at a beautiful restaurant in downtown Chicago. All my friends were there, my parents, even some of my professors from DePaul. Carmen remembered that night perfectly. Jordan had given a speech about how proud he was of her, how she inspired him to be a better person. Everyone had applauded, and Carmen had felt like the luckiest woman in the world. That was also the night he first said he loved me. Carmen paused and took a sip of her coffee. The next part was harder to talk about. But even during the good times, there were warning signs. I just didn't want to see them. Jordan's temper would flare up over small things. If a waiter took too long with their order, he would snap at them. If fans bothered them during dinner, he would get angry and rude. He started making comments about what I wore, who I talked to. Nothing big at first, just little suggestions that I thought meant he cared about me. Jordan didn't like it when Carmen talked to other men, even classmates at school or customers at her parents' restaurant. He said he was just being protective. But Carmen started to feel watched all the time. The gambling was getting worse too. He would disappear for hours after games, coming back angry and upset. When I asked where he had been, he would tell me it was none of my business. Carmen found out later that Jordan was losing huge amounts of money in private poker games around Chicago. Sometimes $50,000 in one night. The losses made him mean and unpredictable. But the worst thing was how he treated people he thought were beneath him. Restaurant workers, hotel cleaning staff, fans who weren't important enough. He could be so cruel. Carmen remembered a night at a fancy hotel when Jordan screamed at a young cleaning woman for accidentally bumping into him in the hallway. The woman had started crying, but Jordan just walked away like nothing happened. I started to see that there were two Michael Jordans. The one the public saw, charming, heroic, perfect. And the one I knew, angry, controlling, and sometimes mean. Carmen opened the metal box she had brought. Inside was an old cassette tape, some photographs, and a few letters. By March 1993, things were getting scary. He wanted to know where I was every minute of the day. He would show up at DePaul between my classes, at my parents' restaurant when I was working. He said he just missed me, but it felt like he was checking up on me. Carmen pulled out one of the photographs. It showed her and Jordan at a Bulls game, both smiling and looking happy. But Carmen remembered what happened right after that photo was taken. He got angry because I had talked to one of the other players' wives. He grabbed my arm so hard it left bruises and told me I was embarrassing him. Then 5 minutes later, he was signing autographs and acting like nothing happened. The public Michael Jordan was always perfect. He smiled for every camera, signed every autograph, said all the right things in interviews. But Carmen was starting to see that it was all an act. I began to understand that everything had to be his way. What we ate, where we went, who we spent time with. If I disagreed with him about anything, he would get furious and then give me the silent treatment for days. Carmen, put the photograph back in the box. The last good memory I have was in early March 1993. We went ice skating at Millennium Park. It was snowing and the city looked beautiful. For a few hours, he was the sweet man I had fallen in love with. But even that night ended badly. Jordan got upset because other skaters recognized him and wanted pictures. He blamed Carmen for suggesting they go somewhere so public. That's when I started to realize that the fairy tale was ending, Carmen said. The man I thought I loved was disappearing, and someone darker was taking his place. Jennifer had been writing the whole time, but now she looked up. "When did you first suspect he was recording you?" Carmen's face grew serious. "Little things at first. He would bring up conversations I thought no one else had heard. He would know things about my phone calls with my parents or friends. I started to feel like someone was always listening. Then there were the cameras. Jordan always had the latest technology, expensive video equipment that he claimed was for watching game films. But Carmen noticed cameras in strange places in his apartment. When I asked him about it, he said he was paranoid about break-ins, that rich people always had security cameras. It seemed reasonable at the time." Carmen closed the metal box. She wasn't ready to show Jennifer the tape yet. That would come later, when she was ready to relive the worst night of her life. "The golden time lasted about 6 months," Carmen said. "From October 1992 to March 1993. 6 months, when I thought I was dating a hero. I didn't know I was actually dating a predator." Jennifer closed her notebook. "What happened in March that changed everything?" Carmen stood up and put the box back in her purse. "That's when I discovered the truth about what he was really doing. Not just to me, but to other women too. That's when the nightmare really began." As Carmen walked to her car, she thought about those 6 months of happiness. They had felt so real at the time. Jordan's love had seemed genuine. His promises had seemed true. But now she knew it had all been part of his plan. The kindness, the attention, the promises. It was all designed to make her trust him completely. That way, when he revealed his true nature, she would be too attached to leave. 1 week later, Carmen sat in the same cafe booth, but this time the metal box was open on the table. The cassette tape sat between them like a bomb waiting to explode. "I need to tell you about March 18, 1993, Carmen said. "The night I discovered who Michael Jordan really was." Jennifer leaned forward. She could see that Carmen's hands were shaking. The Bulls were playing the New York Knicks in the playoffs. It was a huge game. The whole city was excited. I was supposed to perform at halftime with the other dancers. Carmen remembered getting ready in the locker room at Chicago Stadium. She had been so proud of her uniform, so excited to dance in front of 20,000 people. She had no idea her world was about to fall apart. That afternoon, Michael had practice. I went to DePaul for my business class, then stopped by the Palmer House Hilton to surprise him with dinner from my parents' restaurant. The Palmer House was where the Bulls players often stayed when they wanted privacy. Jordan kept a suite there for times when he didn't want to go home to his regular apartment. When I got to his room, he wasn't there, but the door was unlocked, so I went in to wait for him. Carmen paused and took a deep breath. This was the hardest part of the story to tell. I was putting the food on the table when I heard voices from the bedroom. Michael was talking to someone. I thought maybe it was Scotty or one of the other players. But as Carmen got closer to the bedroom door, she realized Jordan wasn't talking to another player. He was talking to a woman. I heard a woman crying. Then I heard Michael laughing. Not a nice laugh. A mean laugh. I got scared and hid in the closet. Through the crack in the closet door, Carmen saw something that made her stomach sick. Jordan was showing another woman a videotape on his television. The woman was crying and begging him to turn it off. The woman was Diana Thompson. She worked at the hotel. She was maybe 19 years old, very young and scared. Michael was showing her a tape of private moments between them. Carmen's voice got very quiet. He was using the tape to force her to do things she didn't want to do. He told her if she didn't cooperate, he would show the tape to her boss and she would lose her job. Carmen watched in horror as Jordan threatened Diana. He said he had tapes of lots of women, and he could ruin any of their lives whenever he wanted. Diana was crying so hard she could barely speak. She kept saying, "Please don't hurt me." But Michael just kept laughing. Carmen realized she had to get out of there before Jordan discovered her. She quietly snuck out of the suite and ran to the hotel lobby. Her mind was spinning with what she had just seen. I sat in the lobby for 2 hours trying to understand what I had witnessed. The man I thought I loved was hurting people. He was using secret recordings to control women. When Jordan finally came downstairs, he acted like nothing had happened. He was charming and sweet, asking Carmen why she looked upset. He thanked her for bringing dinner and kissed her on the cheek. That's when I realized how good he was at pretending. He could switch from being a monster to being Prince Charming in seconds. Carmen couldn't perform at the game that night. She called in sick and went home to her parents' house in Pilsen. She needed time to think about what she had seen. I didn't sleep for 3 days. I kept thinking about Diana crying, about Michael laughing. I wondered how many other women he was hurting. Carmen decided she had to find out more. She started paying attention to things she had ignored before. The way Jordan talked about women, the expensive video equipment in his apartment, the way certain hotel workers acted nervous around him. I talked to Sophia, my friend who was also a Bulls dancer. I asked her if she had noticed anything strange about any of the players. She told me something that made my blood run cold. Sophia had heard rumors about Jordan and other women. Hotel workers who suddenly quit their jobs, reporters who stopped covering the team, women who seemed scared to talk about their time with him. Sophia said there were whispers that Michael recorded everything. Phone calls, private meetings, intimate moments, but nobody wanted to talk about it because he was too powerful. Carmen realized she had to confront Jordan directly. She couldn't pretend she didn't know what she knew. I called him and asked to meet privately. He suggested Grant Park near Buckingham Fountain. It was late at night, around 11 o'clock. Grant Park, after dark, was quiet and empty. Jordan arrived in his red Ferrari, the same car that had once made Carmen feel like a princess. Now it just reminded her of his wealth and power. I told him what I had seen at the hotel. I said I knew about Diana and about the recordings. I expected him to deny it or try to explain. Instead, Jordan's reaction shocked Carmen. He didn't deny anything. He didn't seem embarrassed or sorry. He just looked at me with cold eyes and said, "So what are you going to do about it?" Carmen told Jordan she wanted him to stop hurting people. She said she would go to the police if he didn't destroy all the recordings and leave those women alone. That's when he showed me who he really was. He started laughing, the same cruel laugh I had heard in the hotel room. Jordan told Carmen that she was being silly. He said all powerful men kept insurance on the people around them. The recordings were just business, a way to protect himself. He said I should be honored that he chose me, that most women would do anything to be in my position. When Carmen threatened to go public with what she knew, Jordan's attitude changed completely. The fake charm disappeared and something dark took its place. He grabbed my arm so hard I thought he might break it. He pushed me against a tree and got very close to my face. He told me that if I ever said anything to anyone, he would destroy my entire family. Jordan's threats were specific and scary. He said he would make sure her parents' restaurant failed. He would get her kicked out of DePaul University. He would make sure she never worked in Chicago again. Then he said something that terrified me. He told me he had been recording our conversations too. He had tapes of me talking about private things, about my family, about my dreams. He said he could use those tapes to make me look crazy or dishonest. But Carmen had been smarter than Jordan realized. During their conversation at Grant Park, she had a small tape recorder hidden in her purse. She was recording everything he said. When he admitted to recording women for years, when he threatened my family, when he bragged about having powerful friends who would help him cover up his crimes, I got it all on tape. Jordan didn't notice the recorder. He was too busy threatening Carmen and telling her all the ways he could ruin her life. He told me about other athletes who did the same thing. He mentioned businessmen and politicians who were part of his circle. He said they all protected each other and no one could touch them. The conversation lasted almost an hour. Jordan revealed details about his system of recording and controlling women. He named specific people who helped him cover up his activities. By the time he was done talking, I had enough evidence on tape to destroy his reputation forever. But Carmen was also more terrified than she had ever been in her life. Jordan's threats felt real and immediate. She believed he could do everything he said he would do. When he finally let me go, he kissed me on the forehead like nothing had happened. He said, "I'm glad we understand each other now, baby. See you tomorrow." Carmen drove home in shock. She sat in her car outside her parents' restaurant for hours, listening to cars go by and trying to process what had just happened. That night, I realized I had two choices. I could go to the police with my evidence and risk everything Jordan threatened. Or I could disappear and try to build a new life somewhere else. Carmen looked at the cassette tape on the table. I was 23 years old and scared out of my mind. I chose to run. Jennifer stared at the tape. "Carmen, this recording could be evidence of serious crimes, sexual coercion, extortion, conspiracy. I know that now, but then I just wanted to get as far away from Michael Jordan as possible." Carmen picked up the tape and held it in her hands. After 30 years, it still felt heavy with secrets and pain. The next day, I quit the dance team, dropped out of school, and left Chicago. I drove straight to Milwaukee and never looked back. She put the tape back in the box. I thought if I stayed quiet and disappeared, Michael would leave me alone. I thought I could just forget everything that happened. Carmen's voice got very soft. But you can't run away from the truth forever. It follows you everywhere you go. Jennifer reached across the table and gently touched Carmen's hand. You were so young. You did what you had to do to survive. Carmen wiped her eyes with a napkin. The hardest part was leaving my parents without explaining why. They thought Michael and I just broke up. They kept asking when he would visit the restaurant again. 2 days after the confrontation at Grant Park, Carmen had packed one suitcase and driven north to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Her cousin Elena Rodriguez lived there and had always told Carmen she could visit anytime. Elena was 5 years older than me and worked as a nurse at Milwaukee General Hospital. When I showed up at her apartment crying and refusing to explain why, she just hugged me and made up the couch. Carmen stayed on Elena's couch for 3 months. She was too scared to get a job or enroll in school. Every time the phone rang, she thought it might be Jordan or someone working for him. I watched the news constantly. The Bulls were in the playoffs and Michael was everywhere. Every sports channel, every newspaper. Watching him smile and wave to crowds made me sick to my stomach. In October 1993, something happened that shocked the whole world. Michael Jordan announced he was retiring from basketball. He said he had lost his love for the game and wanted to try something new. When I heard the news, I wondered if my threats had scared him. Maybe he was worried that I would talk, but then I realized he probably just didn't care. He knew I was too afraid to say anything. Carmen slowly began to build a new life in Milwaukee. She found a job at a small dance studio called Riverside Dance Academy, teaching classes to young children. Working with kids helped me heal a little bit. They were so innocent and happy. They reminded me that not everyone in the world was cruel like Michael. But Carmen was still living in fear. She used cash for everything, so Jordan couldn't track her credit cards. She didn't call her parents very often because she worried their phone might be tapped. One day in November 1993, something happened that terrified me all over again. Carmen had been walking to work when she noticed a man in a dark suit following her. He stayed about half a block behind her, but she could feel him watching. I ducked into a coffee shop and waited. The man walked past, but I saw him look through the window at me. That's when I knew Michael's people had found me. Carmen called in sick to work and spent the day hiding in Elena's apartment. That evening, Elena came home with disturbing news from her job at the hospital. Elena told me that a man had been asking questions about me at the hospital. He claimed to be from an insurance company, but the security guard thought he seemed suspicious. The man had asked if anyone named Carmen Rodriguez worked there or had been treated there recently. He had a photo that looked like Carmen, but from several years earlier, I realized that Michael was having me watched. Even though I had run away and stayed quiet, he wanted to make sure I didn't change my mind. Carmen knew she had to disappear even more completely. She and Elena drove to the Social Security office, where Carmen applied for a legal name change. I became Carmen Elena Martinez, using my cousin's middle name and my grandmother's maiden name. It wasn't much protection, but it made me feel a little safer. Carmen also changed her appearance. She cut her long black hair short and dyed it brown. She started wearing glasses even though her eyes were fine. She wanted to look as different as possible from the young woman who had danced for the Bulls. For the next few years, I lived like a ghost. I worked small jobs, paid rent in cash, and tried to become invisible. In 1994, Jordan came out of retirement and returned to basketball. Carmen watched from Milwaukee as he led the Bulls to 3 more championships. Each time she saw him celebrating, she felt sick. The worst part was seeing him treated like a hero. Millions of people loved him and thought he was perfect. Only I knew the truth about what he had done. Carmen tried dating a few times, but it never worked out. She had trouble trusting men, especially men who were confident or successful. I would have panic attacks if a man raised his voice or grabbed my arm, even accidentally. I couldn't handle anyone trying to control me or tell me what to do. In 1998, Carmen met David Chen, a social worker who specialized in helping trauma survivors. David was patient and gentle, nothing like Jordan. David helped me understand that what happened to me wasn't my fault. He helped me see that Michael's behavior was abuse, not love. Through therapy with David, Carmen began to heal. She realized that she had been a victim of someone who used his power to hurt people. She wasn't weak or stupid for being fooled by Jordan's charm. David also helped me understand something else. I wasn't the only woman Michael had hurt, and as long as I stayed quiet, he would keep hurting others. But Carmen still wasn't ready to speak up. The fear was too strong, and Jordan's power had grown over the years. In late 1999, Carmen discovered something that changed everything again. She was pregnant. I had been dating David for about 6 months. We were happy together and I thought the baby might be his. But when Carmen went to the doctor for her first appointment, the timing didn't make sense. Based on the due date, the baby had been conceived in early 1999, before she started dating David seriously. I realized the father had to be someone I had been with briefly in January 1999. A man I met at a New Year's Eve party who looked familiar but whose name I never learned. Carmen had been drinking that night, trying to forget the painful anniversary of her relationship with Jordan. She made a mistake with a stranger who had kind eyes and a gentle smile. When I saw the ultrasound of my baby, I got the shock of my life. Even as a tiny image on a screen, the baby looked exactly like Michael Jordan. Carmen's hand started shaking as she remembered that doctor's appointment. The realization that hit her was devastating. The man at the New Year's party wasn't a stranger. It was Michael Jordan. He had been in Milwaukee, probably checking up on me. Somehow we ended up at the same party. Carmen realized that Jordan had recognized her even with her changed appearance. He had approached her at the party, knowing she wouldn't recognize him immediately because of the alcohol in the crowd. He seduced me all over again, just like he had in 1992, except this time, he left the next morning and I never saw him again. Carmen was devastated. After years of running away from Jordan, she was now carrying his child. She felt trapped all over again. I thought about getting an abortion. I thought about giving the baby up for adoption. But when I felt the baby move inside me, I realized I couldn't do either of those things. David was confused when Carmen broke up with him and moved out of Milwaukee. She told him she needed space to think about her life, but she couldn't tell him the real reason. I drove to a small town called Waukesha, about 20 miles west of Milwaukee. I got a job at a local dance studio and prepared to raise my baby alone. Carmen gave birth to Marcus Rodriguez on August 15th. She gave him her original last name because she wanted him to know part of his heritage, even if she could never tell him about his father. When I held Marcus for the first time, I saw Michael's eyes looking back at me. It was beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time. Carmen moved back to Milwaukee when Marcus was 2 years old. She opened her own small dance studio, Carmen's Dance Academy, in a converted warehouse on the south side of the city. I focused all my energy on raising Marcus and helping other kids through dance. It gave my life meaning and helped me heal from the trauma. But raising Jordan's son while keeping the secret was incredibly difficult. Marcus inherited his father's athletic ability and competitive spirit. He was smart and charming. Just like Jordan, every time Marcus smiled or laughed or got that determined look in his eyes, I saw his father. It was a constant reminder of everything that had happened. Carmen never told Marcus who his father was. She told him his dad was someone she had known briefly who wasn't ready to be a parent. Marcus would ask questions sometimes, especially when he got older. He wanted to know if his father was tall like him or if he played sports. I would answer as vaguely as possible. The hardest moments came when Marcus played basketball in middle school and high school. He was good, though not exceptional. Watching him on the court made Carmen think about what might have been different if Jordan had been a better man. Sometimes I wondered if I should have told the truth years earlier. Maybe if I had spoken up in 1993, Michael would have gotten help. Maybe other women wouldn't have been hurt. By 2010, Carmen had built a good life in Milwaukee. Her dance studio was successful. Marcus was doing well in school, and she had finally started to feel safe. But I still carried that cassette tape with me everywhere I went. It was in my purse, then in my car, then in a safety deposit box at First Wisconsin Bank. I could never throw it away. Carmen looked at Jennifer across the cafe table. For 25 years, I told myself I was protecting Marcus by staying quiet. But really, I was protecting myself. I was still that scared 23-year-old girl who ran away and Jennifer closed her notebook. What changed? Why are you ready to speak now? Carmen smiled sadly. Marcus is 33 years old now. He has his own life and his own career. and I realized that staying quiet hasn't protected anyone. Michael Jordan is still out there, still powerful, still hurting people. Carmen picked up the metal box and held it close to her chest. I'm 64 years old. I don't have many years left to make this right. If I don't tell the truth now, I never will. Outside the cafe, snow was starting to fall on the streets of Chicago. Carmen watched the flakes drift past the window and thought about her parents, who had died never knowing why their daughter had really left the city they loved. The truth follows you everywhere, Carmen said quietly, but so does the chance to finally do the right thing. Jennifer looked at her watch. They had been talking for 3 hours, but she could see Carmen wasn't finished with her story. There's more, isn't there? Jennifer asked gently. Carmen nodded. The hardest part was watching Marcus grow up. Every day I saw more of his father in him. From the time Marcus could walk, he was drawn to sports. He loved throwing balls, running races, competing with other kids. But unlike his father, Marcus was kind to everyone he met. When Marcus was 5, he started asking about his daddy. I told him his father was a basketball player who lived far away. It wasn't exactly a lie. Carmen remembered Marcus's 6th birthday party at Chuck E. Cheese. He had invited 12 kids from his kindergarten class, watching him share his pizza and help smaller kids play games. Carmen felt proud and sad at the same time. Marcus had his father's competitive spirit, but none of his cruelty. He would get upset when other kids were mean to each other. He always stood up for kids who were being bullied. As Marcus got older, the questions about his father became harder to answer. He wanted to know his father's name, where he lived, why he never visited. I told Marcus that some grown-ups make mistakes and aren't ready to be parents. I said his father probably loved him but couldn't be part of his life. Carmen's dance studio. Carmen's Dance Academy became her sanctuary. She taught classes to kids from all over Milwaukee's South Side. Many of them came from families that didn't have much money, just like she had when she was young. Teaching dance gave me purpose. These kids needed someone who believed in them. They reminded me that there was still good in the world. One student was especially special to Carmen. Maria Santos was 8 years old when she started taking classes in 2008. She was shy and scared, but she had natural talent. Maria reminded me of myself at that age. She loved to dance, but her family worried about the cost of lessons. I gave her a scholarship and watched her bloom. Over the years, Carmen helped dozens of kids like Maria. Some went on to dance in high school and calls. Others just learned to believe in themselves. All of them made Carmen feel like her life had meaning. But even when I was happiest, teaching kids and watching Marcus grow up, I carried guilt about staying silent. I wondered how many other women Michael had hurt while I said nothing. Carmen followed Jordan's career from a distance. She watched him win 3 more championships with the Bulls. She saw him retire again in 1998, then come back to play for the Washington Wizards. Every time he was on TV, Marcus would stop and watch. He loved basketball and thought Michael Jordan was the greatest player ever. I had to leave the room. The hardest moment came in 2009, when Jordan was inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame. Marcus, who was 9 years old, watched the ceremony on TV with complete fascination. Michael gave this beautiful speech about hard work and never giving up. The whole world was celebrating him. Marcus looked at me and said, "Mom, wouldn't it be cool if my dad was famous like Michael Jordan?" Carmen had to go to the bathroom and cry. Her son was wishing his father could be like the man who had hurt her so badly. In 2010, Carmen made a decision that would change both their lives. Marcus was 10 and asking more questions about his father. Carmen realized she needed help. I started seeing a therapist named Dr. Sarah Williams. She specialized in helping women who had survived abuse. Dr. Williams helped Carmen understand that keeping Jordan's secret was still allowing him to control her life. Even though he wasn't physically present, his power over her continued. Dr. Williams said that children deserve to know the truth about their parents, even when that truth is painful. She helped me think about what I would eventually tell Marcus. But Carmen wasn't ready to tell Marcus everything. The boy idolized basketball players, especially Jordan. How could she tell him that his hero was also his father, and that his father was a monster? I decided to wait until Marcus was older, maybe when he turned 18 and could handle the truth better. The years passed quietly. Carmen's dance studio grew successful. Marcus did well in school and played basketball for his high school team. He was good though, not great. Carmen was secretly relieved that he didn't have elite talent like his father. Marcus was popular and had lots of friends. He was respectful to adults and kind to younger kids. Watching him become a good man was my greatest accomplishment. In 2016, Marcus graduated from high school and got accepted to the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. He decided to study business, just like Carmen had wanted to do 30 years earlier. I was so proud when Marcus walked across that graduation stage. He had broken the cycle. He was nothing like his father. But as Marcus got older, he became more curious about his father. In college, he started doing research trying to figure out who his dad might be. Marcus knew I had lived in Chicago in the 1990s. He knew I had danced for the Bulls. He started putting pieces together. One day in 2017, Marcus came home from college with a serious expression on his face. "Mom," he said, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth." Carmen's heart started racing. She thought Marcus had figured out who his father was. "Did my father hurt you?" Marcus asked quietly. Carmen was shocked by the question. She had tried so hard to hide her pain, but Marcus had seen it anyway. "Why would you ask that?" Carmen said. "Because you get sad every time I ask about him. Because you change the subject whenever we talk about the past. Because you flinch sometimes when men are loud or aggressive." Carmen realized that Marcus had been watching her his whole life, trying to understand why his mother seemed scared of something he couldn't see. "You don't have to tell me his name," Marcus said, "but I need to know if he hurt you. Because if he did, then I understand why he's not part of our lives." Carmen sat down on the couch next to her son. For the first time in 17 years, she told him a piece of the truth. "Yes," she said, "your father hurt me. That's why he's not here." Marcus hugged his mother and told her he was sorry. He said he would stop asking questions about his father. All that mattered was that they had each other. That conversation made me realize how much Marcus had grown up. He wasn't a little boy anymore. He was a man who could handle difficult truths. But Carmen still wasn't ready to tell him everything. The secret about Jordan felt too big, too dangerous. In 2018, Marcus graduated from college with a business degree. He got a job with the Milwaukee Brewers baseball team, working in their marketing department. Marcus loved sports, but he chose baseball over basketball. I always wondered if that was because he sensed something painful about basketball that he couldn't quite understand. Marcus moved into his own apartment but still visited Carmen regularly. They would have dinner together twice a week and talk about his work and her dance studio. Those were peaceful years. I felt like we had both found our place in the world. I thought maybe I could keep the secret forever. But then came 2020 and the Last Dance documentary about Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls. The whole world became obsessed with Jordan all over again. Marcus watched every episode. He was fascinated by the behind-the-scenes stories about the Bulls' championship years. He kept asking me if I remembered any of the events they showed. Carmen watched the documentary too, and it brought back all her painful memories. She saw Jordan being portrayed as a hero and a winner. There was no mention of the women he had hurt, or the lives he had destroyed. After the documentary aired, Marcus started asking questions about my time with the Bulls again. He wanted to know about the players I had met, the games I had attended, the parties I had gone to. Carmen deflected his questions, but she could tell Marcus was getting suspicious. He was smart and persistent, just like his father. One night in late 2020, Marcus came to dinner with a manila folder full of papers. He had been doing research about the Bulls dancers from the early. Marcus had found old newspaper articles with photos of the dance team. He had found Carmen's name in several articles about the 1992 and 1993 championship. "Mom," Marcus said, spreading the papers on Carmen's kitchen table, "you were there for some of the most famous moments in Bulls history. You danced at games where Michael Jordan made legendary shots. Why don't you ever want to talk about it?" Carmen looked at the old photographs of herself in her Bulls uniform. She looked so young and happy with no idea what was coming. "Because it didn't end well," Carmen said finally. "What happened?" Carmen picked up one of the photos. In it, she was smiling and holding pom-poms, surrounded by her fellow dancers. In the background, she could see Jordan on the court, preparing for a game. "I fell in love with someone I shouldn't have fallen in love with," Carmen said. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, "Was it one of the players?" Carmen nodded, unable to speak. "Was it my father?" Carmen looked at her son's face. He had the same dark eyes as his father, but they were filled with kindness instead of cruelty. Yes, Carmen whispered. Marcus sat back in his chair, processing this information. Which player was it? Carmen closed her eyes. After 27 years, she was finally going to tell someone the truth. Michael Jordan, she said quietly. The silence in the kitchen was deafening. Marcus stared at his mother, trying to understand what she had just told him. Michael Jordan is my father? Marcus asked finally. Carmen nodded, tears streaming down her face. Then why? Marcus started to ask, but then he stopped. He looked at his mother's tears and realized he already knew the answer. He hurt you badly, didn't he? Marcus said. Yes, Carmen said. He hurt me very badly. Jennifer watched as Carmen wiped tears from her eyes. The cafe had grown quiet around them as the afternoon crowd left and evening customers began to arrive. That must have been an incredibly difficult conversation, Jennifer said softly. Carmen nodded. Marcus didn't sleep that night. Neither did I. The next morning, he came back to my apartment with 100 questions. Carmen remembered that morning clearly. Marcus had arrived at 7 a.m. with coffee and bagels, but neither of them could eat. The first thing he asked was if I was sure. Maybe I was confused about who his father was. Maybe there was some mistake. But there was no mistake. Carmen showed Marcus the box she had kept hidden for so many years. The photos of her and Jordan together. The Bulls dancer ID card. The hospital bracelet from when Marcus was born. When Marcus saw the pictures, he went very quiet. He could see the resemblance between himself and his father. The same eyes, the same smile, even the same way of standing. Marcus had stared at the photos for a long time. In one picture, Jordan had his arm around Carmen at a restaurant. They both looked happy and young. Marcus asked me why I never told him. I explained that I was scared of what Jordan might do if he found out about Marcus. I was scared of what the world would think. I was scared of everything. But Marcus's next question surprised Carmen. He asked if Jordan knew about him. If his father knew he existed. Carmen had to tell Marcus about the night in 1999, when Jordan had found her in Milwaukee, how she believed Jordan had deliberately gotten her pregnant and then disappeared. Marcus was shocked that his father might have known about him all these years, and never tried to make contact. That hurt him more than anything else. Over the following weeks, Marcus struggled with this new information about his identity. He took time off work and spent hours researching Jordan's life and career. Marcus found articles about Jordan's gambling problems, his competitiveness, his difficult relationships with teammates. But he couldn't find anything about the kind of abuse I had experienced. Carmen realized that Jordan had been very careful to keep his darker side hidden from the public. The recording, threats and systematic abuse of women had never been reported. Marcus asked to hear the tape recording I had made in 1993. I wasn't sure if I should let him, but he said he needed to understand what kind of man his father really was. The day Carmen played the recording for Marcus was one of the hardest days of her life. They sat in her living room as Jordan's voice filled the space, cold and threatening. Marcus listened to his father admit to recording women without permission. He heard Jordan threaten to destroy our family. He heard the cruelty in Jordan's voice when he talked about having power over people. When the recording ended, Marcus sat in silence for almost an hour. Carmen watched her son process the fact that his biological father was not just absent, but actively harmful. Finally, Marcus looked at me and said, "Mom, other people need to know about this." Marcus understood what Carmen was just beginning to realize. Jordan's abuse hadn't stopped with her. If he was still alive and powerful, he was probably still hurting people. Marcus said we had a responsibility to speak up. That staying silent was allowing Jordan to continue harming others. But Carmen was still afraid. Even after all these years, Jordan's threats felt real. She worried about what would happen to her dance studio, to Marcus's career, to their peaceful life in Milwaukee. Marcus reminded me that I had taught him to stand up to bullies. He said this was the biggest bully of all, and it was time to fight back. Carmen knew Marcus was right, but she needed time to prepare mentally for what lay ahead. She also needed to find a reporter who would handle the story responsibly. That's when I remembered Jennifer Walsh from the Chicago Tribune. She had seemed genuine when she approached me at the grocery store. I decided to call her. Jennifer looked up from her notes. "I'm so glad you did. Stories like this are exactly why I became a journalist." Carmen continued her story. After that first phone call to Jennifer, she had spent weeks gathering evidence and preparing to tell her story publicly. I went to the safety deposit box at First Wisconsin Bank and got the original tape recording. I organized all the photos and documents I had saved. I even wrote down everything I could remember about the other women Jordan had hurt. The most difficult part was preparing Marcus for what would happen once the story became public. I told Marcus that people might not believe us. They might say we were making up lies for money or attention. Some people would defend Jordan no matter what evidence we showed them. Carmen also worried about how the story would affect Marcus's life and career. Marcus worked for a professional sports team. His coworkers and boss might not understand why he was speaking out against the most famous athlete in history. But Marcus was determined to move forward. He said he couldn't live with himself knowing what his father had done and staying silent about it. Marcus also said something that surprised me. He said he was glad to finally understand why I had been sad for so much of his childhood. He said it made sense now. Carmen realized that her son had been carrying his own burden all these years, wondering why his mother seemed haunted by something she couldn't name. We decided that we would tell the story together. Marcus would support me and help people understand that Jordan's actions had real consequences that lasted for decades. 2 weeks before meeting with Jennifer, Carmen had done something she hadn't done in 30 years. She drove back to Chicago and visited her old neighborhood in Pilsen. I went to the spot where my parents' restaurant used to be. There's a cell phone store there now, but I could still remember the smell of my mother's cooking. Standing on that familiar street corner, Carmen thought about how different her life might have been if she had never met Jordan. Maybe she would have finished college and opened her dance studio in Chicago. Maybe her parents would have lived to see their grandson grow up. But then I realized that if I had never met Jordan, I wouldn't have Marcus. And Marcus is the best thing that ever happened to me, even if his father is the worst. Carmen also visited Grant Park, the place where Jordan had threatened her 30 years earlier. She stood by Buckingham Fountain and listened to the recording on her phone. Hearing Jordan's voice in that same location gave me chills. But it also made me angry in a way I hadn't felt for years. I was tired of being afraid of him. When Carmen returned to Milwaukee, she was ready to tell Jennifer everything. She was ready to face whatever consequences came from speaking the truth. The night before our first meeting, Marcus and I had dinner together. He told me he was proud of me for finally finding the courage to speak up. Marcus also made a promise that touched Carmen's heart. He said that no matter what happened with the story, he would never let Jordan hurt me again. He said I had protected him his whole life, and now it was his turn to protect me. Jennifer closed her notebook and looked at Carmen with admiration. You've been incredibly brave to carry this secret for so long and incredibly brave to finally share it. Carmen smiled sadly. I don't feel brave. I feel scared and tired and angry. But Marcus is right. Other people need to know the truth about Michael Jordan. Jennifer leaned forward. Carmen, I want you to know that I take stories like this very seriously. I'm going to verify every detail I can. I'm going to talk to other sources and experts. This will be done ethically and responsibly. What happens next? Carmen asked. First, I need to digitize that recording and have it analyzed by audio experts. I also want to try to find some of the other women you mentioned. Diana Thompson is gone, but there might be others who would be willing to speak. Carmen felt a mixture of relief and terror. After 30 years of silence, the truth was finally going to come out. I also need to contact Michael Jordan's representatives for comment. Jennifer continued. They deserve a chance to respond to these allegations before anything is published. Carmen's hands started shaking again. What if he denies everything? What if he says the recording is fake? Then we'll let experts determine the authenticity. We'll let readers decide who they believe. But Carmen, you're not that scared 23-year-old girl anymore. You're a successful businesswoman with a grown son who supports you. You have the power now. As Carmen walked to her car that evening, she thought about Jennifer's words. She did have power now. The power to tell her story, to seek justice, and to prevent Jordan from hurting anyone else. But she also knew that the hardest part was yet to come. Soon, the whole world would know her secret, and Michael Jordan would finally have to face the consequences of what he had done. Jennifer put down her pen and looked at Carmen with concern. I need to ask you something important. How is Marcus handling all of this? Learning that Michael Jordan is his father must be overwhelming. Carmen's face showed the weight of a mother's worry. It's been the hardest thing either of us has ever gone through. 3 weeks had passed since Carmen first told Marcus the truth. During that time, she watched her son struggle with anger, confusion, and pain. The first few days were the worst. Marcus called in sick to work and barely left his apartment. When I went to check on him, I found him sitting on his couch, staring at old Bulls highlights on his laptop. Marcus had grown up admiring Jordan like millions of other kids. His bedroom walls had been covered with Jordan poster. He had worn number 23 in high school basketball. Marcus told me he felt like his whole life had been a lie. He said he didn't know who he was anymore, if his hero was also his father and his father was also a monster. Carmen remembered the phone call that made her rush to Marcus's apartment at midnight. Marcus called me crying. He said he had been watching Jordan's Hall of Fame speech over and over. He couldn't understand how someone who hurt so many people could stand up there and talk about honor and respect. Carmen found her son sitting in the dark, surrounded by old basketball magazines and newspaper clippings about Jordan. Marcus said he felt guilty for ever admiring Jordan. He felt stupid for not figuring out who his father was sooner. He was angry at me for keeping the secret, even though he understood why I did it. The conversation that night lasted until sunrise. Carmen and Marcus talked about everything. The abuse, the threats, the years of fear and silence. Marcus asked me if I ever hated him because he looked like his father. That question broke my heart. I told him that he was the only good thing that came from that terrible time in my life. Slowly, Marcus began to process the information in a healthier way. He started seeing a counselor who specialized in helping people deal with difficult family situations. The counselor helped Marcus understand that he wasn't responsible for his father's actions. She helped him see that he had grown up to be a kind, honest person despite his genetics. But Marcus still struggled with anger toward Jordan. He would get furious reading articles that praised Jordan as a role model and family man. Marcus started researching everything he could find about Jordan's personal life. He found rumors about gambling debts, stories about Jordan being mean to teammates and fans, hints that there might be darker secrets. Carmen worried that Marcus was becoming obsessed with his father, but in a different way than before. Instead of idolizing Jordan, Marcus started hating him. The counselor said this was normal, but it scared me. I didn't want hatred to consume my son's life the way fear had consumed mine. 2 weeks after learning the truth, Marcus made a decision that surprised Carmen. He said he wanted to meet Jordan face to face. He wanted to confront his father and tell him what he thought of him. Carmen was terrified by this idea. She begged Marcus not to contact Jordan, worried about what might happen. I told Marcus that Jordan was dangerous and unpredictable. I reminded him about the threats and the violence, but Marcus said he wasn't a scared young woman like I had been. He said he could handle himself. Marcus was 23 years old, the same age Carmen had been when she fled Chicago. But unlike his mother, he wasn't planning to run away. Marcus said he had spent his whole life wondering about his father. Now that he knew the truth, he deserved to look Jordan in the eye and tell him what he thought of him. Carmen tried to talk Marcus out of this plan, but she could see his mind was made up. He had inherited Jordan's determination, even if he used it for better purposes. I realized that Marcus needed to do this for himself. He needed to stop being the victim of a secret and become someone who could face the truth directly. Carmen made Marcus promise that he wouldn't meet Jordan alone. She insisted that any confrontation happen in a public place with witnesses. Marcus agreed, but he said he was going to contact Jordan's representatives whether I liked it or not. He said he had the right to meet his biological father, even if that father was a terrible person. Carmen spent sleepless nights worrying about what would happen when Jordan learned about Marcus. Would he deny paternity? Would he threaten them? Would he try to buy their silence? I kept thinking about that night in 1999 when Jordan found me in Milwaukee. He had seemed so calm and charming, but I knew there was violence underneath. I was terrified he would hurt Marcus. But Marcus was determined to move forward. He researched Jordan's business contacts and found the phone number for his management company. Marcus practiced what he would say on the phone. He wanted to sound professional and confident, not emotional or angry. The day Marcus made the call, Carmen waited at his apartment. She was too nervous to leave him alone. Marcus called Jordan's office and spoke to an assistant. He said his name was Marcus Rodriguez, and he had information about Jordan's past that Jordan would want to hear privately. To everyone's surprise, Jordan's people took the call seriously. They called back within 2 hours to schedule a meeting. Jordan's assistant said Mr. Jordan was very interested in hearing what Marcus had to say. They offered to fly Marcus to Chicago for a private meeting at Jordan's office. Carmen felt sick when she heard this news. Jordan's quick response seemed suspicious, almost like he had been expecting this call. I wondered if Jordan had been keeping track of us over the years. Maybe he knew about Marcus and had been waiting for this moment. Marcus booked a flight to Chicago for the following week. Carmen begged him to let her come along, but Farkas said this was something he needed to do by himself. Marcus told me he wasn't going to tell Jordan who he was right away. He wanted to see how Jordan reacted to questions about the past before revealing their relationship. The night before Marcus left for Chicago, Carmen gave him a small tape recorder. I told him to record everything Jordan said. If Jordan threatened him or tried to intimidate him, we would need evidence. Carmen also made Marcus promise to call her every hour during his trip to Chicago. If she didn't hear from him, she would call the police. Marcus laughed and said I was being overprotective. But I had lived with fear of Jordan for 30 years. I knew how dangerous he could be. As Marcus's plane took off from Milwaukee, Carmen sat in her dance studio and tried to teach classes normally, but her mind kept wandering to what might be happening in Chicago. I kept imagining different scenarios. Maybe Jordan would deny everything and call security to throw Marcus out. Maybe he would offer Marcus money to stay quiet. Maybe he would threaten Marcus the same way he had threatened me. But there was another possibility that scared Carmen even more. What if Jordan was actually glad to meet his son? What if he tried to win Marcus over with charm and promises? I worried that Marcus might be fooled by his father's manipulation, the same way I had been fooled 30 years earlier. Carmen's phone rang every hour just as Marcus had promised. But his updates were brief and didn't tell her much. Marcus texted me when he landed, when he got to his hotel, and when he arrived at Jordan's office building. But he couldn't call me from inside the meeting. For 2 hours, Carmen heard nothing. She paced around her apartment, checking her phone every few minutes. I started imagining all the terrible things that might be happening. Maybe Jordan had Marcus arrested on false charges. Maybe he was threatening Marcus's job, or his future. Maybe he was using his power to hurt my son the same way he had hurt me. Finally, at 4 p.m. Chicago time, Marcus called. "Mom," he said, "you're not going to believe what just happened." Carmen's heart was pounding. "Are you okay? Did he hurt you?" "I'm fine, but Mom, you need to sit down." Carmen sat on her couch, gripping the phone tightly. "I met him, Mom. I looked Michael Jordan in the eye and told him I was your son." "What did he say?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. "He said he's been waiting for this day for 24 years. Carmen felt the blood drain from her face. Jordan had known about Marcus all along. He had known about his son and chosen to stay away. "There's more, Mom," Marcus continued. "He wants to see you. He says it's time for all three of us to talk." Carmen's worst fear was coming true. After 30 years of hiding, Michael Jordan was pulling her back into his world. And this time, her son was right in the middle of it. Carmen's hands were shaking as she held the phone. "Marcus, listen to me very carefully. Do not agree to meet with him again. Come home right now." But Marcus's voice was different than she had ever heard it before. Calm and determined, but also angry. "Mom, I'm not running away like you did 30 years ago. I looked him in the eye today and he's not the scary monster I expected. He's just a man who made terrible choices." Carmen felt panic rising in her chest. "Marcus, you don't understand. He's manipulating you already. That's what he does." "No, Mom, I recorded everything. I have proof of what he said, and you need to hear it." Carmen took a deep breath. "Tell me what happened." "Everything." Marcus had arrived at the Jordan Brand headquarters building in downtown Chicago that morning. The building was impressive, with glass walls and photos of Jordan's greatest basketball moments everywhere. They took me up to the 20th floor. Jordan's personal office overlooked the whole city. When I walked in, he was standing by the window in an expensive suit. Marcus described how Jordan turned around and immediately went silent. For almost a full minute, neither of them spoke. "Mom, the resemblance is crazy. I could see him recognizing himself in my face. He looked like he was seeing a ghost." Finally, Jordan had spoken first. "You look exactly like I did at your age," Jordan had said quietly. Marcus told Carmen that Jordan seemed genuinely shocked, even though he later admitted he had been expecting this moment for years. "I told him my name was Marcus Rodriguez, and that my mother was Carmen Rodriguez. I said she used to dance for the Bulls, and that they had a relationship in. Jordan had nodded slowly, never taking his eyes off Marcus. Then I said, I think you're my father, and I think you know it. Jordan had walked to his desk and sat down heavily. He looked older than Marcus expected, more tired and worn down than in recent photographs. He said, yes, I know. I've known since the day you were born. Carmen felt sick hearing this. He knew? All these years, he knew you existed and never tried to contact you? That's what I asked him, Marcus said. I asked why he never tried to be part of my life if he knew about me. Jordan's answer had surprised Marcus. Instead of making excuses or denying responsibility, Jordan had been brutally honest. He said he was a coward. He said he knew he was a terrible person who would only hurt me, so he stayed away to protect me. Carmen couldn't believe what she was hearing. This didn't sound like the cruel, threatening man she remembered. Marcus, he's lying to you. He's trying to make himself sound noble when really he just didn't want to take responsibility. But Marcus continued his story. Then I asked him about what he did to you. I told him I knew about the recordings, the threats, the other women he hurt. This was the moment Marcus had been most nervous about. He expected Jordan to deny everything or get angry. Instead, he put his head in his hands and said, I've been waiting for someone to confront me about that for 30 years. Jordan had confirmed everything Carmen had told Marcus. The secret recordings, the systematic abuse of multiple women, the threats to destroy anyone who spoke out. He didn't deny any of it, Mom. He said it was all true and that he'd been living with the guilt ever since. Carmen was confused. This wasn't the Michael Jordan she knew. The Jordan she remembered would never admit to wrongdoing or show remorse. Then he said something that really shocked me, Marcus continued. He said he's been in therapy for years, trying to understand why he hurt people. He said he's been waiting for the right time to make amends. Jordan had told Marcus that he had been secretly helping some of the women he had hurt over the years, paying for their therapy, their education, their children's needs. Always anonymously, always without admitting what he had done. He said he knew it wasn't enough. He said nothing could undo the pain he caused. But he was trying to help people without making it about himself. Carmen didn't know what to think. Marcus, this could all be lies. He might be trying to manipulate you into feeling sorry for him. That's what I thought too, Marcus said. So I tested him. I asked him specific questions about things only he would know if he was telling the truth. Marcus had asked Jordan about the night at Grant Park when he threatened Carmen, about the hidden cameras in hotel rooms, about Diana Thompson and what happened at the Palmer House, Hilton. He remembered everything, Mom. Details that weren't on your recording. He told me things that proved he was telling the truth about what he did. But Jordan had also told Marcus things that Carmen didn't know about. He said that after you disappeared in 1993, he tried to find you, not to hurt you, but to apologize and try to make things right. Jordan had hired private investigators to track Carmen down, but when they found her in Milwaukee, Jordan decided to leave her alone. He said he could see that you were building a new life and he didn't want to destroy that. He said he thought you would be better off without him. Then came the revelation that shocked Marcus most of all. He said he knew about me because he saw you when you were pregnant. He was in Milwaukee in 1999 for a business meeting, and he saw you at that New Year's Eve party. Carmen gasped. She had always wondered if Jordan had deliberately found her that night or if it was a coincidence. He said he recognized you immediately, even though you looked different. He said he was going to leave the party, but then he saw you drinking and looking sad, and he felt responsible. Jordan had approached Carmen that night knowing exactly who she was. But according to Marcus, Jordan's motivation wasn't what Carmen had thought. He said he was worried about you. He wanted to make sure you were okay. He said he didn't plan for anything to happen between you. But something had happened. And when Jordan realized Carmen was pregnant months later, he faced a terrible choice. He said he could have stayed in Milwaukee and tried to be part of your lives, but he knew that would mean admitting what he had done to you and facing the consequences. Instead, Jordan had made the decision to disappear again and watch from a distance as Carmen raised their child alone. He said it was the most selfish thing he ever did. He said he chose protecting his reputation over protecting his family. Marcus told Carmen that Jordan had been keeping track of both of them for years. He knew about Carmen's dance studio, Marcus's education, his job with the Brewers. He said he was proud of how you raised me. He said he was proud that I grew up to be nothing like him. By this point in their conversation, Marcus said Jordan had been crying. Real tears from a man who seemed genuinely broken by the weight of his own actions. That's when he asked to see you, Mom. He said he's been wanting to apologize to you for 30 years, but he never had the courage. Carmen felt overwhelmed by everything Marcus was telling her. The Jordan he was describing sounded completely different from the man who had terrorized her in 1993. Marcus, I don't know if I can face him. Even if he's changed, seeing him might bring back all the trauma and fear. I understand, Mom. But he said something else that I think you need to hear. Jordan had told Marcus that he was ready to face the consequences of his actions publicly. He was tired of living with secrets and guilt. He said if you decide to tell your story to the press, he won't fight it. He won't deny anything or try to discredit you. He said it's time for the truth to come out. More than that, Jordan was willing to cooperate with any investigation. He would provide evidence, confirm details, face whatever legal or personal consequences resulted. He said he knows he can't undo the past, but he wants to try to prevent other powerful men from making the same mistakes he made. Carmen sat in stunned silence, trying to process everything Marcus had told her. There's one more thing, Mom, Marcus said quietly. What? He wants to meet both of us together. He said he owes you the apology he should have given 30 years ago. And he wants to tell me about his family, my grandparents, aunts, uncles. He said I have the right to know where I come from, even if I choose not to have a relationship with him. Carmen looked out her window at the Milwaukee skyline. For 30 years, she had imagined this moment, facing Michael Jordan again, and telling him what his actions had done to her life. Now that the moment was finally here, she felt scared, angry, curious, and strangely hopeful all at the same time. When does he want to meet? Carmen asked. Tomorrow, Marcus said. He's cleared his whole schedule. He said this is more important than anything else he has going on. Carmen closed her eyes and thought about the terrified 23-year-old girl who had fled Chicago in 1993. That girl had been powerless and alone. But Carmen was 54 years old now. She had built a successful business, raised a wonderful son, and survived 30 years of carrying this secret. She wasn't that scared young woman anymore. And maybe it was time to prove that to herself and to Michael Jordan. Okay, Carmen said finally. Tell him I'll meet with him. But Marcus, I want you to promise me something. What? No matter what he says or how sorry he seems, remember that words are just words. Judge him by his actions, not his apologies. As Carmen hung up the phone, she realized that tomorrow would either be the worst day of her life or the day she finally found closure. Either way, she was ready to stop running from the truth. The next morning, Carmen stood in front of her bathroom mirror, trying to decide what to wear to meet the man who had shaped her life for 30 years. Her hands were shaking as she applied lipstick. Marcus picked her up at 9 a.m. for the drive to Chicago. They barely spoke during the 2-hour trip, both lost in their own thoughts about what lay ahead. Are you sure about this, Mom? Marcus asked as they entered downtown Chicago. Carmen looked out at the city where her life had changed forever. No, but I'm sure I can't spend the rest of my life wondering what if. They met at the Palmer House Hilton, the same hotel where Carmen had discovered Jordan threatening Diana Thompson in 1993. Jordan had suggested they meet somewhere neutral, and Carmen had chosen this location deliberately. I wanted him to remember what he did here, Carmen told Marcus as they walked through the elegant lobby. Jordan was waiting in a private conference room on the 5th floor. When Carmen walked through the door and saw him for the first time in 30 years, she felt dizzy. He looked older, of course. His hair was gray and his face had lines. But his eyes were the same dark eyes she remembered, and the same eyes she saw in her son every day. Carmen, Jordan said quietly, standing up from his chair. Thank you for coming. Carmen didn't respond. She sat down across from him at the conference table and waited for him to speak first. I know words can't fix what I did to you, Jordan began. But I need you to know that I've regretted my actions every day for 30 years. Carmen studied his face, looking for signs of the cruel man she remembered. Instead, she saw someone who looked tired and sad. You destroyed my life, Carmen said simply. You took away my education, my family, my home. You made me afraid for 30 years. Jordan nodded. I know, and I'm sorry isn't enough. Nothing I say will ever be enough. Marcus watched his parents carefully. This was the first time they had been in the same room since he was conceived. Why now? Carmen asked. Why are you ready to admit what you did now when you wouldn't 30 years ago? Jordan was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. Because I'm dying, he said finally. Carmen and Marcus both stared at him in shock. I have pancreatic cancer. The doctors say I have maybe 6 months to live. Carmen felt a strange mixture of emotions. Surprise, sadness, and something that might have been relief. I've spent the last 2 years trying to make amends for my past. Jordan continued. I've been quietly helping women I hurt, donating money to organizations that support abuse survivors, trying to use my influence for good instead of harm. Jordan pulled out a folder and placed it on the table. These are bank records showing payments I've made over the years. Therapy bills, college tuition, medical expenses. I've been trying to help repair the damage I caused. Carmen looked through the papers. There were hundreds of payments to different women, always made anonymously through lawyers and charities. I found Diana Thompson's family after she died in that car accident in 1995. I've been paying for her daughter's education ever since. Carmen felt tears in her eyes. Diana Thompson, the young hotel worker she had tried to help, had died just 2 years after Jordan hurt her. The accident wasn't really an accident, Jordan said quietly. Diana had been struggling with depression and drinking problems after what I did to her. She drove her car into a tree on purpose. Carmen put her hand over her mouth in horror. Diana had killed herself because of what Jordan did to her. That's when I realized that my actions didn't just hurt women in the moment. They destroyed lives permanently. Diana's death was my fault. Jordan told them about the other women he had hurt over the years. Some had struggled with relationships and trust issues. Others had developed anxiety and depression. Several had attempted suicide. I've been paying for their therapy and medical care, but it's not enough. I can't bring Diana back. I can't undo the trauma I caused. Carmen wiped tears from her eyes. She thought about all the nights she had woken up in a cold sweat, all the times she had been afraid to be alone with men, all the ways Jordan's abuse had shaped her life. Why didn't you get help sooner? Carmen asked. Why didn't you stop hurting people? Jordan looked down at his hands. Because I was addicted to power. The recordings, the control, the fear I created in people, it made me feel powerful and important. He explained that his abuse of women had been connected to his gambling addiction and his need to feel in control of everything around him. Basketball was the only thing I was naturally good at. But in relationships, I felt powerless and scared. So I used my fame and money to create artificial power over people. Jordan had been in therapy for 15 years, trying to understand his behavior and learn how to be a better person. My therapist helped me realize that I was repeating patterns from my own childhood. My father was controlling and sometimes violent. I learned that love meant power and control. Carmen listened as Jordan talked about his difficult relationship with his father, his struggles with depression and anxiety, and his gradual understanding of how much pain he had caused. None of that excuses what I did, Jordan said, but it helps explain why I became someone who could hurt innocent people. Marcus had been quiet through most of the conversation, but finally he spoke up. What do you want from us now? Marcus asked his father. Jordan looked at his son with eyes full of sadness and love. I want you to know that you were the one good thing that came from the worst period of my life. Watching you grow up from a distance has been my greatest pride and my greatest regret. Jordan told Marcus about all the times he had secretly watched him play basketball in high school. He had attended Marcus's high school graduation, sitting in the back row where Carmen couldn't see him. I wanted to be part of your life so badly, but I knew that would mean disrupting the peaceful life your mother had built for you. Jordan reached into his jacket and pulled out a small wrapped package. This is for you, he said, handing it to Marcus. I've been saving it for years, hoping someday I would have the chance to give it to you. Marcus unwrapped the package carefully. Inside was a silver watch with an inscription on the back, to son Marcus with love and regret. I'm proud of the man you've become. And Marcus stared at the watch, tears forming in his eyes. I had that made when you graduated from college, Jordan said. I was there that day too, watching from the parking lot as you walked across the stage. Carmen felt a complex mix of emotions. She was angry that Jordan had been watching their lives without their knowledge. But she was also touched by his obvious love for Marcus. What do you want us to do now? Carmen asked. Jordan leaned forward and looked directly into Carmen's eyes. I want you to tell your story to the world. I want you to expose me for what I really was. and I want to face the consequences publicly before I die. Jordan explained that he had already contacted his lawyers and publicists. He was prepared to confirm every detail of Carmen's story and provide additional evidence of his crimes. I've written a detailed confession, naming all the women I hurt and describing exactly what I did. I'm prepared to release it along with your story. Jordan also said he was planning to liquidate many of his business assets and donate the money to organizations that help abuse survivors. I can't give those women their lives back, but I can try to help other women who are going through similar experiences. Carmen sat back in her chair, overwhelmed by everything she had heard. You're asking me to help you look like a hero in your final months. You want people to remember you as someone who made amends instead of someone who was a predator. Jordan shook his head. No, I want people to remember me as someone who did terrible things and spent the rest of his life trying to make up for them. I want other powerful men to see what happens when you abuse your position. Carmen thought about Jennifer Walsh waiting for her call. The story was ready to be published as soon as Carmen gave the word. If I do this, it won't just affect you, Carmen said. It will affect Marcus too. People will know he's your son. His life will never be the same. Marcus spoke up again. Mom, I've already made peace with that. I'd rather have people know the truth than live with this secret anymore. Jordan reached across the table and touched Carmen's hand gently. I know I have no right to ask you for anything. But please, let me try to do this right. Let me face the consequences of my actions while I'm still alive to do it. Carmen pulled her hand away, but not angrily. She needed space to think. I need some time to process all of this, she said. I understand. Take all the time you need. Carmen stood up to leave, but then she turned back to Jordan. One more question. If you hadn't gotten cancer, would you have ever told the truth? Jordan was quiet for a long moment. I don't know, he said honestly. I like to think I would have found the courage eventually. But maybe it took facing death to make me brave enough to face the truth. As Carmen and Marcus left the hotel, Carmen felt emotionally exhausted, but also strangely relieved. For 30 years, she had imagined Michael Jordan as an all-powerful monster who could destroy her life with a phone call. Instead, she had found a broken, dying man who seemed genuinely sorry for what he had done. That didn't erase the pain he had caused or excuse his crimes. But it did make Carmen feel like she finally had the power in their relationship. What are you gonna do, Mom? Marcus asked as they drove back to Milwaukee. Carmen pulled out her phone and dialed Jennifer Walsh's number. Jennifer? It's Carmen. I'm ready to tell my story to the world. 2 weeks later, the story ran on the front page of the Chicago Tribune with the headline, The Hidden Truth About Michael Jordan. Former Bulls dancer reveals decades of abuse. The article included Carmen's full account, Jordan's detailed confession, and supporting evidence from multiple sources. Jordan held a press conference the same day, confirming every detail and apologizing publicly to all the women he had hurt. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Some people refused to believe the story, defending Jordan as a hero who was being attacked unfairly. Others were shocked and disappointed but praised his willingness to take responsibility. More importantly, the story encouraged other women to come forward with their own experiences of abuse by powerful men. Carmen received hundreds of letters and emails from women thanking her for her courage. 6 months later, Michael Jordan died quietly in his sleep. His obituaries mentioned both his basketball greatness and his personal failures, presenting a complete picture of a complex man who had achieved incredible success while causing tremendous pain. At his funeral, Carmen and Marcus sat in the back row. They didn't speak to Jordan's family or friends, but they were there to witness the end of a story that had shaped their lives for 3 decades. As they walked out of the church, Marcus put his arm around his mother's shoulders. "Are you glad we told the truth?" he asked. Carmen thought about all the women who had contacted her, all the conversations that had started because of their story, all the powerful men who might think twice before abusing their position. "Yes," she said. "I'm glad we finally told the truth." 3 weeks after the Chicago Tribune story was published, Carmen sat in her dance studio, watching the news coverage that had consumed the sports world. Every channel seemed to be talking about Michael Jordan's fall from grace. Marcus walked into the studio carrying 2 cups of coffee and sat down next to his mother. "How are you holding up?" he asked, handing her a cup. Carmen sipped her coffee and watched ESPN analysts debate whether Jordan's basketball legacy could survive the scandal. "I'm tired," she admitted. "I didn't expect the reaction to be this intense." The story had exploded across social media within hours of publication. MJ Truth and Believe Carmen were trending on Twitter. Sports Talk Radio couldn't discuss anything else. Some people supported Carmen and praised her courage for speaking out. Others attacked her, claiming she was lying to get money and attention. The divide was sharp and angry. "Look at this," Marcus said, showing Carmen his phone. "Someone started a GoFundMe to help with your legal expenses. It's already raised $50,000. Carmen felt overwhelmed by the support, but also by the hate. She had received dozens of threatening messages from Jordan fans who refused to believe their hero could do such things. "Maybe we made a mistake," Carmen said quietly. "Maybe some secrets should stay buried." Marcus put his arm around his mother's shoulders. "Mom, look at this email I got yesterday." He showed Carmen a message from a woman named Sarah Chen in Los Angeles. "Dear Marcus and Carmen," he read aloud. "I wanted to thank you for your courage in telling your story. 15 years ago, I was assaulted by a famous actor who threatened to ruin my career if I spoke out. I stayed silent because I was scared, just like your mother was, but your story gave me the strength to finally report what happened to me. The police are now investigating, and I'm not the only victim who has come forward. You may have saved other women from being hurt. Thank you for your bravery." Carmen wiped tears from her eyes. Letters like this had been arriving every day since the story broke. "We've gotten over 200 messages like this," Marcus said. "Women who were hurt by powerful men and felt like they couldn't speak up. Our story is helping them find their voice." Carmen knew Marcus was right, but the constant media attention was exhausting. Reporters camped outside her dance studio every day. Her phone rang constantly with interview requests. Jennifer Walsh called this morning. Carmen said, "She wants to do a follow-up story about how other women are coming forward." Marcus nodded. "That's good. The more women who speak up, the harder it becomes for powerful men to abuse their positions." Carmen's phone buzzed with a news alert. She looked at the screen and gasped. "Marcus, look at this." The alert read, "Breaking. Michael Jordan to hold press conference today at 3 p.m. Eastern." For 3 weeks, Jordan had remained silent despite the media storm. His representatives had issued a brief statement saying he was reviewing the allegations, but Jordan himself hadn't spoken publicly. "Do you think he's going to deny everything?" Marcus asked. Carmen felt her stomach tighten with anxiety. "I don't know. Maybe his lawyers convinced him to fight back." At 2:55 p.m., Carmen and Marcus were glued to the television in her dance studio. Other parents picking up their children from dance class had stayed to watch too. Everyone wanted to see how Michael Jordan would respond. The press conference was held at the United Center in Chicago, the arena where Jordan had won his final 3 championships with the Bulls. Dozens of reporters packed the room, their cameras focused on the empty podium. At exactly 3 p.m., Jordan walked out alone. He looked thinner than he had 3 weeks earlier. The cancer treatments were clearly taking a toll on his body. Jordan approached the microphone and looked directly into the cameras. The room was completely silent. "Good afternoon," Jordan said, his voice steady but tired. "I'm here today to address the allegations made by Carmen Rodriguez and published in the Chicago Tribune 3 weeks ago." Carmen held her breath. She had imagined this moment for 30 years, wondering what Jordan would say if he was ever confronted publicly with his crimes. "I want to be very clear about something," Jordan continued. "Every allegation made by Ms. Rodriguez is true." The press room erupted in chaos. Reporters shouted questions and cameras flashed, but Jordan raised his hand for silence. "I sexually abused multiple women during my playing career. I recorded intimate moments without consent. I used my power and influence to intimidate and control people. I threatened Ms. Rodriguez and forced her to flee Chicago to protect herself and her family." Carmen stared at the television in shock. She had expected Jordan to deny everything or make excuses. Instead, he was confirming her story in the most public way possible. "I have spent the last 15 years in therapy, trying to understand how I became someone capable of such cruelty. I have been secretly supporting the women I hurt, paying for their therapy and medical expenses. But that was not enough. Nothing I do can undo the pain I caused." Jordan paused and looked down at his prepared statement. "I want to address something else. Miss Rodriguez and I have a son together, Marcus Rodriguez. He is 23 years old and works for the Milwaukee Brewers. I have known about Marcus since the day he was born. But I made the selfish decision to stay out of his life. The press room exploded again. This was the first public confirmation that Jordan had a secret son. Marcus is a good man who grew up to be everything I failed to be. He is kind, honest, and brave. His mother raised him to be the kind of person I should have been. Jordan looked directly into the camera, and Carmen felt like he was speaking directly to her and Marcus. Carmen Rodriguez is a hero. She survived my abuse and built a beautiful life for herself and our son. She had every right to tell her story, and I will not challenge or dispute anything she says. Jordan announced that he was donating $50 million to organizations that support survivors of sexual abuse. He was also establishing a foundation to provide free legal services to women who want to report crimes by powerful men. I am dying, Jordan said simply. I have pancreatic cancer and probably 6 months to live. I could have taken my secrets to the grave and protected my reputation. Instead, I choose to face the consequences of my actions while I am still alive to do so. Jordan's voice became emotional as he continued. To every woman I hurt, I am deeply sorry. I know my apology means nothing compared to the trauma you endured, but I want you to know that I take full responsibility for my actions. He looked back at the camera. To my son Marcus, I am sorry that you had to learn about me this way. You deserved a better father, and I am grateful that your mother gave you everything I could not. Jordan concluded his statement with words that shocked everyone in the press room. I am hereby resigning from all business positions associated with my name. I am selling my ownership stake in the Charlotte Hornets and donating the proceeds to charity. I will spend my remaining months trying to repair the damage I have caused. As Jordan walked away from the podium without taking questions, Carmen sat in stunned silence. Mom, Marcus said quietly, are you okay? Carmen was crying, but they weren't tears of sadness. For the first time in 30 years, she felt truly free. He didn't fight us, she whispered. He didn't deny anything. He told the truth. The reaction to Jordan's press conference was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours, Jordan Truth was trending worldwide. Sports commentators called it the most shocking confession in sports history. Some people praised Jordan for taking responsibility and trying to make amends. Others said it was too little, too late. But everyone agreed that his admission had changed the conversation about sexual abuse and power forever. That evening, Carmen received a phone call from Jennifer Walsh. Carmen, have you seen the latest news? Jennifer asked. What now? 12 more women have come forward since Jordan's press conference. They're all ready to tell their stories about being abused by powerful men in sports entertainment and business. Carmen felt a surge of pride and hope. Really? Jordan's confession gave them courage. They saw that even the most powerful man in sports could be held accountable, so they believe they can get justice too. Carmen looked at Marcus, who was helping young dancers with their homework in the corner of the studio. Jennifer, I want to help those women tell their stories. Are you sure you've been through so much already? Carmen thought about Diana Thompson, who had died alone and afraid. She thought about all the women who had suffered in silence because they thought no one would believe them. I'm sure, if my story can help other women find justice, then everything we've been through was worth it. As Carmen hung up the phone, she realized that Jordan's response had changed everything. By admitting his crimes publicly and facing the consequences, he had made it easier for other victims to speak out. For 30 years, Carmen had carried the burden of Jordan's secrets. Now finally, the truth was setting everyone free. 1 month after Jordan's press conference, Carmen received an unexpected phone call. Miss Rodriguez? This is David Chen, Mr. Jordan's personal assistant. Mr. Jordan would like to meet with you and your son one final time before his condition worsened. Carmen's heart started racing. She hadn't spoken to Jordan since their meeting at the Palmer House Hilton 2 months earlier. What does he want? Carmen asked. He says he has something important to give you both. Something that belonged to his father that he wants Marcus to have. Carmen looked across her dance studio at Marcus, who was teaching a group of 8-year-olds how to do simple ballet moves. Her son had been much happier since the truth came out. He no longer carried the weight of wondering about his father. Where would we meet? Carmen asked. Mr. Jordan is staying at a private residence in Lake Forest, about an hour north of Chicago. It's quiet and private. There would be no media or photographers. Carmen thought about it. Jordan was dying, and this might be their last chance to have closure. Can I bring someone with us? A friend or reporter? Mr. Jordan requested that it just be the three of you. But you're welcome to record the conversation if that makes you more comfortable. Carmen agreed to meet Jordan the following weekend. She told Marcus about the invitation, and he wanted to go. I think I need to see him one more time, Marcus said. To say goodbye, I guess. That Saturday morning, Carmen and Marcus drove to Lake Forest. The house was a beautiful mansion overlooking Lake Michigan. Jordan's assistant met them at the door and led them to a sunroom filled with plants and comfortable chairs. Jordan was sitting by a large window when they arrived. He looked much thinner than he had during the press conference. The cancer was clearly winning its battle. Thank you for coming, Jordan said, standing up slowly to greet them. Carmen noticed that he moved like an old man now, careful and deliberate with each step. How are you feeling? Marcus asked his father. Some days are better than others, Jordan admitted. But I'm glad you're both here. I have something I want to share with you. Jordan gestured for them to sit down. On a small table next to his chair were several photo albums and a wooden box. I've been going through my father's things, Jordan said. James Jordan died in 1993, the same year you left Chicago. Carmen, I never got to show him pictures of his grandson. Jordan opened one of the photo albums. The pages were filled with old family photographs going back decades. This is your grandfather, Jordan said to Marcus, pointing to a picture of a tall man in a military uniform. He served in the army and worked hard his whole life to provide for our family. Marcus studied the photograph carefully. He could see the family resemblance in the man's eyes and smile. Your grandfather would have loved you, Jordan continued. He always said that character matters more than talent. You have both, but more importantly, you have the good character I never developed. Jordan turned the page and showed them more family pictures. Marcus's grandmother, aunts, uncles, and cousins. A whole family history that Marcus had never known about. I want you to have these albums, Jordan said to Marcus. You should know where you come from, even if you choose not to have relationships with my side of the family. Carmen watched as Marcus looked through the photographs. She could see him trying to understand his place in this family history. There's something else, Jordan said, opening the wooden box. Inside was a gold watch and chain that looked very old. This belonged to your great-grandfather, Jordan told Marcus. It was passed down from father to son in our family for 4 generations. My father gave it to me when I turned 18. Jordan lifted the watch carefully and showed Marcus the inscription on the back. To James Jordan Jr., with love and pride. May you always do what is right. Your father. I was supposed to give this to my son when he turned 18, Jordan said. But I missed that chance with you. I missed a lot of chances. Marcus took the watch and held it carefully in his hands. I don't know if I deserve this, Marcus said quietly. You deserve it more than I ever did, Jordan replied. You've lived with honor and kindness. You've treated people with respect. You are everything this family hoped their sons would become. Jordan turned to Carmen next. I have something for you too. He handed Carmen an envelope with her name written on it in Jordan's handwriting. What is this? Carmen asked. A letter I wrote to you in 1994, after you left Chicago. I never sent it because I was too much of a coward. But I want you to have it now. Carmen opened the envelope carefully. Inside were several pages of handwritten text. She could see that the letter had been written and rewritten many times. You don't have to read it now, Jordan said. But I wanted you to know that I understood what I had lost when you left. I knew I had destroyed the best thing in my life. Carmen folded the letter and put it back in the envelope. She would read it later when she was ready. There's one more thing I need to tell you both, Jordan said. Something that might help you understand why I became the person I was. Jordan explained that he had been sexually abused by an older coach when he was in high school. The coach had used his power and influence to hurt Jordan and threatened him to stay quiet. I never told anyone what happened to me, Jordan said. I buried that trauma and pretended it didn't exist. But it shaped how I treated other people, especially women. Carmen felt a complicated mix of emotions hearing this. It didn't excuse what Jordan had done to her, but it helped explain how the cycle of abuse had continued. I'm not telling you this to make excuses, Jordan continued. I'm telling you because I want Marcus to understand that trauma can be passed down from generation to generation unless someone breaks the cycle. Jordan looked at his son with tears in his eyes. You broke the cycle, Marcus. You grew up to be kind and respectful despite having my genes. Your mother raised you right, and you chose to be better than me." Marcus was crying, now too. Despite everything his father had done, seeing him dying and full of regret was hard works. "I forgive you," Marcus said quietly. Jordan looked shocked. "You don't have to do that." "I know, but I need to do it for myself. I can't carry anger and hatred for the rest of my life. It would poison me the same way it poisoned you." Carmen watched her son make this mature decision and felt proud of the man he had become. "What about you, Carmen?" Jordan asked. "Can you ever forgive me?" Carmen thought about the question for a long time. Forgiveness felt too big, too complicated. "I can't forgive you yet," she said honestly. "Maybe someday. But I can let go of the fear and hatred. I can choose to move forward without carrying that burden anymore." Jordan nodded. "That's more than I deserve." They spent another hour looking through photo albums and talking about family history. Jordan told Marcus stories about his grandparents and showed him pictures from his own childhood. As they prepared to leave, Jordan asked Marcus for a favor. "Would you consider coming to my funeral? Not to mourn me, but to represent the family. To show my relatives that something good came from my life. Even if I was a failure as a father." Marcus looked at Carmen, who nodded. "Yes," Marcus said. "I'll be there." Jordan hugged his son for the first and last time. It was awkward and emotional, but it felt necessary. "Take care of your mother," Jordan whispered to Marcus. "She's the strongest person I've ever known." As Carmen and Marcus drove back to Milwaukee, they were both quiet and thoughtful. "Are you okay?" Carmen finally asked. "I think so," Marcus replied. "It's strange. I feel sad that he's dying, but also relieved that this chapter of our lives is finally ending." Carmen understood exactly what he meant. "Do you think you'll have a relationship with his family after he's gone?" Carmen asked. Marcus thought about it. "Maybe. They might be good people who had nothing to do with what he did to you. And it would be nice to know my cousins and aunts." Carmen realized that Jordan's death would mark the end of one story, but potentially the beginning of another. Marcus would have choices to make about his father's family and his own identity. But for the first time in 30 years, those would be choices made from a place of truth rather than secrets. That night, Carmen finally read Jordan's letter from 1994. In it, he admitted his crimes and expressed genuine remorse. He wrote about watching her from a distance and seeing her build a new life in Milwaukee. The letter ended with words that brought tears to Carmen's eyes. "I hope someday you can find peace and happiness. I hope our son grows up to be nothing like me and everything like you. You deserved so much better than what I gave you. I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough to tell you that when it mattered." Carmen folded the letter carefully and put it away. It didn't change anything that had happened, but it gave her a sense of closure she hadn't expected to find. 2 weeks later, Michael Jordan died peacefully in his sleep. Carmen and Marcus attended the funeral as promised, sitting quietly in the back of the church. They didn't speak to Jordan's family that day, but several relatives approached Marcus afterward. His aunt invited him to visit North Carolina sometime to meet his cousins. His uncle said James Jordan Sr. would have been proud to have Marcus as a grandson. As they left the cemetery, Carmen felt something she hadn't felt in decades: freedom. The man who had controlled her life through fear and secrets was gone. The truth had been told, justice had been served, and she could finally move forward without looking over her shoulder. "What happens now, Mom?" Marcus asked, as they walked to their car. Carmen smiled at her son, the man who had helped her find the courage to speak her truth. "Now we live," she said simply. "We help other people find their voices. We run our businesses, we build relationships based on honesty instead of secrets. We get to have normal lives." For the first time in 30 years, normal felt like the most wonderful thing in the world. 6 months after Michael Jordan's funeral, Carmen stood in front of a room full of reporters at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. She was no longer the scared woman who had first called Jennifer Walsh a year ago. She was confident, powerful, and ready to change the world. "Ladies and gentlemen," Carmen began, "I'm here today to announce the launch of the Carmen Rodriguez Foundation for Survivor Justice." The foundation had been Carmen's idea, but it was funded by donations from people around the world who had been inspired by her story. Over $2 million had been raised in just 6 months. "Our mission is simple," Carmen continued. "We provide free legal services, counseling, and financial support to women who want to speak out against powerful men who have abused them. In the audience, Marcus sat in the front row beaming with pride at his mother. Next to him sat Jennifer Walsh, who had become not just Carmen's journalist but also her friend and advisor. "We've already helped 43 women file charges against their abusers," Carmen announced. 3 prominent businessmen, 2 politicians, and 1 famous athlete have been convicted and are now in prison. The reporters in the room took notes furiously. Carmen's story had started a movement that was changing how society dealt with abuse by powerful people. "But our work is just beginning," Carmen said. "Too many women are still afraid to speak up because they think no one will believe them or that they can't fight back against wealth and power." Carmen looked directly into the cameras broadcasting her speech live across the country. "I want every woman watching this to know, you are not alone. You are not powerless. And you deserve justice, no matter how famous or wealthy your abuser might be." After the press conference, Carmen and Marcus flew back to Milwaukee. The city had embraced Carmen as a local hero, and the mayor had given her a key to the city for her advocacy work. Carmen's dance academy had also grown. What started as a small studio in a converted warehouse was now a thriving center that served over 300 children from across Milwaukee. "We got 3 more scholarship applications today," Marcus told Carmen as they walked through the expanded facility. "Kids from families who can't afford lessons but want to learn dance." Carmen smiled as she watched young dancers practicing in multiple studios. Some of these children reminded her of herself at that age, full of dreams, but lacking opportunities. "We'll find a way to help all of them," Carmen said. "That's what this place is for." One of Carmen's favorite students was a 12-year-old girl named Sofia Martinez. Like Carmen, Sofia came from a Mexican-American family in Milwaukee. Like Carmen, she was talented, determined, and dreamed of bigger things. "Miss Carmen," Sofia called out, running over with a big smile. "I got accepted to the summer dance program at Northwestern University." Carmen hugged Sofia tightly. Watching young women achieve their dreams had become Carmen's greatest joy. "I'm so proud of you," Carmen said. "You worked so hard for this." "I couldn't have done it without your help," Sofia replied. "You believed in me when nobody else did." As Sofia ran back to practice, Carmen thought about how different her life had become. A year ago, she was living quietly, teaching dance, and keeping her biggest secret. Now she was a public figure, an advocate, and a symbol of hope for women everywhere. Marcus had also found his calling. He had left his job with the Milwaukee Brewers to work full-time for the foundation. His business degree and natural leadership skills made him perfect for managing the organization. "Mom, we need to talk about the NBC interview request," Marcus said, showing Carmen an email on his phone. A major television network wanted to do a 1-hour documentary about Carmen's story and the movement it had started. They were offering a substantial amount of money that could fund the foundation for years. "What do you think?" Carmen asked. "I think we should do it," Marcus said. "But only if they agree to focus on the women we've helped, not just on our personal story." Carmen nodded. She had learned to use media attention strategically, always keeping the focus on helping other survivors rather than making herself famous. That evening, Carmen and Marcus had dinner at Rodriguez Family Kitchen, the restaurant that had been rebuilt in the same location where her parents' original restaurant had stood. The new owners, a young Mexican-American couple, had kept the original name and recipes to honor Carmen's family. "Your parents would be so proud of you," the restaurant owner Miguel Rodriguez, no relation, told Carmen as he served their meal. Carmen touched the small photo of her parents that she always carried in her purse. Roberto and Maria Rodriguez had died never knowing why their daughter had really left Chicago. But Carmen believed they would understand her choices now. After dinner, Carmen and Marcus walked through the Pilsen neighborhood where Carmen had grown up. The area had changed over the years, but it still felt like home. "Do you ever regret telling the story?" Marcus asked, as they passed the house where Carmen had lived as a child. Carmen thought about the question. The past year had been difficult in many ways. Death threats, constant media attention, legal battles, and emotional exhaustion. But it had also been the most meaningful year of her life. "No," Carmen said firmly. "Look what's happened because we told the truth. Dozens of women found justice. Laws have been changed to better protect victims. Powerful men are finally facing consequences for their actions. Carmen pointed to a mural on the side of a building that showed her face alongside other civil rights leaders. Local artists had painted it as a tribute to her courage. Besides, Carmen continued, I sleep better now than I have in 30 years. I'm not afraid anymore. I'm not carrying secrets anymore. I'm free. As they walked back to Carmen's apartment, Marcus's phone rang. He answered it and talked quietly for a few minutes before hanging up. Who was that? Carmen asked. Aunt Patricia, Marcus said with a smile. Patricia was Michael Jordan's sister, who had reached out to Marcus after the funeral. She lived in North Carolina and had invited Marcus to visit the family. She wants to know if we'd like to come for Christmas, Marcus continued. The whole family will be there, and they want to meet you too. Carmen felt nervous about meeting Jordan's family, but also curious. These were good people who had loved Jordan despite his flaws. They were also Marcus's family, and he deserved to know them. What do you think? Carmen asked. I'd like to go, Marcus said. They seem like genuinely good people. And Aunt Patricia said she has more stories about Dad's childhood that might help us understand him better. Carmen realized that even though Jordan was gone, there were still pieces of the puzzle to put together. Understanding Jordan's family might help both her and Marcus heal more completely. Okay, Carmen said. We'll go to North Carolina for Christmas. 3 weeks later, Carmen found herself in Jordan's childhood home, surrounded by his siblings, nieces, nephews, and extended family. The house was warm and welcoming, filled with the smell of home cooking and the sound of children playing. Patricia Jordan pulled Carmen aside after dinner. I want you to know, Patricia said, that our family is ashamed of what Michael did to you. We raised him better than that. Carmen could see the pain in Patricia's eyes. Jordan's actions had hurt his family too, even though they weren't responsible for his choices. I also want to thank you, Patricia continued. By telling your story, you gave Michael the chance to face his mistakes before he died. I think that brought him some peace in his final months. Carmen watched Marcus playing with his young cousins in the living room. He looked happy and relaxed, surrounded by family he had never known existed. Marcus is a wonderful young man, Patricia said. You raised him to be everything Michael should have been. As Carmen tucked Marcus's young cousin into bed that night, the little girl looked up at her with big, curious eyes. Are you really Uncle Michael's friend? The girl asked, innocently. Carmen thought about how to answer. The truth was complicated for a 5-year-old to understand. I'm Marcus's mom, Carmen said simply, and Marcus is your cousin, so that makes me part of your family too. The little girl smiled and hugged Carmen tightly. I'm glad you're part of our family. On the flight back to Milwaukee, Carmen reflected on the visit. Jordan's family had welcomed her and Marcus with open arms. They didn't try to defend Jordan's actions, but they also didn't let his mistakes define their entire family. I'm glad we went, Marcus said, echoing Carmen's thoughts. Me too, Carmen agreed. It helps to see where you come from, even the complicated parts. Back in Milwaukee, Carmen returned to her work with renewed energy. The foundation was growing rapidly, and they were helping women across the country find their voices and seek justice. One afternoon, Carmen received a letter that made her cry tears of joy. It was from Diana Thompson's daughter, now 28 years old and a successful lawyer. Dear Ms. Rodriguez, the letter read, My mother died when I was 8 years old, and I never understood why she was so sad all the time. After your story came out, I finally understood what happened to her. Your courage has helped me make peace with my mother's death and inspired me to become an advocate for other survivors. I'm now representing 3 women who were abused by powerful men in the entertainment industry. Thank you for showing us that even the most powerful abusers can be held accountable. Carmen shared the letter with Marcus, and they both felt the weight of what they had accomplished. Mom, Marcus said, do you think Dad would be proud of what we're doing? Carmen thought about the broken man she had met in his final months. Despite all his terrible choices, Jordan had seemed genuinely remorseful and had wanted to make amends. I think he would be, Carmen said. I think he'd be proud that something good came from all the pain he caused. As the sun set over Milwaukee, Carmen stood in her dance studio, watching the evening classes. Young women of all ages were learning to express themselves through movement, building confidence and strength. This was Carmen's legacy. Not the pain and trauma of her past, but the healing and empowerment she had created for others. Her phone buzzed with a text message from Jennifer Walsh. Just wanted you to know the investigative series we did together won a Pulitzer Prize. Couldn't have done it without your courage. Carmen smiled and put her phone away. Awards and recognition were nice, but they weren't why she had spoken out. She had told her story because it was the right thing to do. Because other women deserved justice. Because secrets lose their power when they're brought into the light. 31 years after she first met Michael Jordan, Carmen Rodriguez had finally found her voice, and she was using it to make sure no woman would ever have to suffer in silence the way she had. As she turned off the lights in her dance studio, Carmen felt something she had been searching for her entire adult life. Peace. The truth had set her free, and now she was helping set others free too. It was exactly the life she was meant to live. We'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let us know your city or country. It's amazing to connect with our global community. If this story moved you, please hit that like button to help spread awareness about these important issues. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more compelling true stories that matter. We share new content every week that explores courage, justice, and the power of speaking truth. Most importantly, please share this video with your friends and family. Stories like Carmen's help break the silence around abuse and show others that no one, no matter how powerful or famous, is above accountability. Together, we can spread kindness, awareness, and hope. Thank you for listening, and remember, your voice matters, your truth matters, and you are never alone.